Hello and welcome to C.G. Radio, everybody. I am your host, Cable Guy. How is everybody today out there in Radio Land? I am well, as I hope you are. So, it's been a little while since the last interview we did with Raven, and I'm in the process of getting him back on the show for the follow-up, as we both promised. So just sit tight with that, everybody. And for today's guest, we have another ECW star, one of the originals, Just Incredible. Okay, real name Peter Palco. Real cool guy. Had a lot of fun setting this up with him, talking with him, and, you know, getting all the ins and outs correct and everything. And, yeah, I have him waiting on the line, and we're about to do an interview, and, you know, he says he has a lot to say, and we're going to be going over a lot today. So, alright, everybody, let's get Just Incredible on the horn.
Hello.
Hey, what's up, Just Incredible?
What's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for taking the time out of your schedule to come on the show.
Oh, my pleasure, man. Anytime.
All right. So let's just get right into it. So, you know, as I'm sure you've heard from my other interviews, I like to go over just a little bit of everything in my interviews about your life, but I always like to start from the very beginning. So I'll ask probably the most generic question you've been asked in your career. What made you decide to get into the wrestling business?
Well, you know, I grew up in the 80s pretty much. I was born in 73. But really, when the first time I saw pro wrestling was Hulk Hogan winning the WWF title from the Iron Sheik, and I was on a black and white TV with the rabbit ears, and I'm sure a lot of the young kids will have no idea what I'm even talking about. And
right.
Yes, there were black and white televisions with these little antennas. But anyways, so yeah, and then I didn't get TBS, which carried NWA and WCW. And one time I was at a friend's house that lived about a half hour, away from me and close to New York. And that was the first time that, cable was really a big thing. Mm-hmm. And that's the first time I watched WTBS, Ric Flair, the Horseman. That's when I really knew that I wanted to be, pro wrestler.
Right. Yeah, I understand your position. I didn't have cable growing up, so the only type of wrestling I got was like Shotgun, Jack Velocity, all that good stuff. But more often than not, you were often on that card, and that's sort of how I got following you.
Yeah, I was on a lot of those Shotgun Saturday nights and cards that nobody wanted to see a guy in a yellow mask or jockstrap, if you will.
Well,
but I was on a lot of those.
But us poors appreciated it, okay? So but going into that, since we're going into that, I saw a few matches of you on YouTube from way back in the day, and it's like I saw one with working where you worked Yokozuna with Yokozuna. Okay, what was that like?
Let me tell you something, man. The guys today, and I hate to sound condescending, but I'm at the risk of sounding condescending. The kids doing it today have a privilege that we never have, and I'm not even sure it's a privilege. To where, in the old days, when we were doing the first couple weeks, months of Raw, we worked in a way that you didn't even really go in the ring at all.
Really?
The first time you stepped in the ring was the first time you were in the ring, looking across from those people, and they were very short with you, very intimidating, and especially as a job guy. And now, yeah, I mean, I kind of didn't know that, but getting my first time when I wrestled Lex Luger.
Right.
I was very nervous, and I trained out in Calgary, Alberta, Canada by the Hearts and Lance Storm. So, it was different, very friendly, the rings were very soft.
Right.
When I got there, man, it was the land of giants. I was 225, really big for me at 19 years old. And, and those rings were built for those guys like Yoko.
Right.
So they wouldn't break them, and they were like hitting cement. Nothing like how the rings are today.
Okay.
And it wasn't until around the Attitude Era when a lot of guys started making money and complaining, getting hurt, that, Vince changed the way he made the rings. But yeah, and it was very scary, and they were very stiff. And if you couldn't wrestle, or if you screwed up one of their signature spots, especially live, they were going to beat the shit out of you for a shoot.
Right. So Lex and Yoko were both stiff?
They weren't, actually.
No.
But that's the thing. They work with you if you know how to work.
Right.
And if you don't listen, and they're calling it out there. I mean, it's amazing to me. And even going back to my earliest stuff, first 10 matches I ever had in Calgary, my sixth one actually was against Lance Storm. My fifth, believe it or not, was Chris Jericho.
Right.
So those are the first 10 matches of my career going in. You really just learned on a weekly basis how to wrestle. So I understood how to listen. But even going back that early, I looked like how it looked on TV when I go to, and this isn't to knock kids down, but when I go to the indies, not all of them. Of course, there's some great indies nowadays, man. Wrestling's really done amazing on an independent level. But when you go and watch some of these, what we used to call outlaw shows, where guys that are barely trained are getting in the ring, and it just looks like something in the backyard.
Right.
And I just never understood that. I always just, you always had that. I always had an instinct to be able to pull it off like they do, or else I wouldn't, and back then the standards were higher because they wouldn't really even smarten you up. So yeah, getting in the ring was a no-no. Because you still smarten up some of the people, the security guards, the people from the building, so they didn't allow it.
Right.
So yeah, it's very intimidating to work a guy like Yoko.
Oh, well, I believe it, because when in the match I was watching, and I'm not like saying this like making fun of you or nothing, but when he slammed you onto the ring, I swear it just looked like you went limp like the wrestlers in the old school wrestling games where they had like no like of the dynamics where when they fall it looked believable. It's like you're just standing, then you're just on your back like out of it. Did he like slam you hard?
No, well, he did, but that's the thing. If you didn't sell their moves, they were going to make sure you wouldn't have to sell the next one.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I made sure I got so good at it because they legit would scare you, intimidate you, whatever.
Right.
And I got so good that sometimes the guys would ask me, "Are you all right?"
Right.
Because I'd work it to the point where I'd even sometimes work the boys. I remember I worked a squash match with Vader when I was PJ Walker before any Aldo stuff or anything.
Right.
And I only did 2 ever shows for WCW. It was Saturday night, I think it was.
Okay.
And Vader did his thing. It was actually not too bad at all. And I worked with Leon since. But the fans in that little place, that little studio in Orlando, actually were like, like a silence hushed over because I was doing the Flair, like I was really hurt, like screaming and selling, like like if somebody that big was really messing you up, you wouldn't be lying dead. You'd be like, oh God, damn it, shit, know.
Right.
I mean, it's what it is, and that's how you would react if somebody came up to you, or hopefully react, the right way in a bar or something. Your adrenaline's up.
Right.
You're gonna try to fight. But if you're hurt, you're going to sell it hurt. So yeah, sometimes it was life or death.
Right. Well, you see, the thing with like wrestling back in the day, and I'm not trying to like bash the product now, but a lot of the wrestlers and the characters they portrayed, they were just so much more believable.
Oh yeah.
Like,
they were. A lot of them were though.
Like I legitimately thought Yokozuna was Japanese up until like I was like 14, until like the internet started taking full swing, and I was like, oh, he was actually in fact Samoan, but he was just that convincing, and with him and Fuji. Right,
yeah. It was. Well, back then, to hint on what you were saying, they seem more believable. I don't know if the characters are more believable, but those were really, guys, they're called shooters for a reason. And if you go down the the history of the business back to its original. I mean, I'm not a historian on that older stuff,
Right.
but they got that name Shooter because these guys could really wrestle.
Right.
And they were legitimate back then. They were legitimate tough guys.
Right.
So it wasn't just pay, $3-4 or whatever it is these days
Right.
to learn how to wrestle, and you'll automatically get an opportunity. There wasn't wrestling schools
Right.
in those days. You'd have to break in, and the way you break in is, sneak into the business somehow, whether you did security and asked or were athletic. Like I remember Scott Hall's a good friend of mine.
Right.
As a lot of you guys know, and Scott told me how he got in is he worked at a gym, I think it was in Tampa, and he happened to work out at the same gym that Barry Windham and Mike Rotunda worked out in.
Oh, really?
And one day he asked him, those guys, you had the courage enough, to big stars in the Florida territory.
Okay.
Scott went over and said, look, man, I'm a bouncer at this club. And Scott looked amazing when he was younger. I mean, he always looked good, but,
Right.
especially when he was young, and he said, how do I get into your business? And Barry and Mike were nice enough, said, listen, kid, come down to I don't know where, I think it was a Tampa Sportatorium, if I'm not mistaken, the
Okay.
old school or the Armory. But either way, and Scott got there at 3:30. Didn't think they were going to show up, and they show up in some red hot Corvette. And Scott described it like something out of a movie, all cool. And
Right.
they brought him in and broke him in slowly.
Right.
He'd show up every week, show his dedication, and in wrestling school, I don't know what they teach these days again, but they didn't teach you suplexes, power bombs. And that stuff you worked out in the ring during the match. So
Right.
if you had an idea, you try to get it together with the other guy. A lot of guys didn't want to talk about that stuff. They just liked to work it out in the ring. But a lot of those new innovative moves really started, or bigger moves would start basically by, how should I even say it? Just, figuring out what you want to do, because no one's going to tell you to, go off the top rope and drop a leg on somebody,
Right. So back in those days when you were rolling with Scott Hall, could you outdrink / out party him?
I'm sorry?
So back in those days when you were rolling with Scott Hall in the earlier days of the WWE, could you outdrink / out party him?
No, absolutely not.
No.
Absolutely not. No, man. I mean, I gotta honestly tell you, I basically started, everything with Scott. My first pill, my first drink. We were doing B towns in the B shows were the smaller shows, and back then they were high school gymnasiums. He was main eventing those with Shawn, and we'd all travel together. And I remember Scott always tells a story. I'm 19, 20 years old, not even, old enough to be in this place, in Massachusetts, some bar. And I was wrestling the Brooklyn Brawler opening match, just P.J. Walker.
Okay.
And he told me, I told him, I messed my shoulder up real bad because they'd have us on the road 30-something days straight, all these shit towns in the middle of nowhere. And,
Right.
You'd get hurt, man. A lot of the conditions are nothing like they are nowadays. So a lot of cold arenas in the middle of the winter.
Right.
Ice hockey arenas and stuff. So, yeah, I got hurt, and Scott popped a pill into my beard. I'd never seen that before. I was
Okay.
like, what is that, man? He goes, take it, puss. Make your shoulder feel better. I said, okay. So I just drank it, and off I went. And Scott tells a funny story of how that day I fell up the stairs because the club was kind of like on a bottom floor.
Right.
So, yeah, I fell up the stairs.
Okay.
That's Scott's fun line, yeah.
So when you were training out in Alberta, were you one of the many who got tricked by Stu Hart into getting stretched one late evening or afternoon after lunch or dinner?
To be honest, full disclosure, no.
Okay.
Now, by that time, it wasn't the way, not in my era, at least. It had changed. Stu was older, and he didn't, not a lot of people got to go up. I never did, to the Hart Dungeon.
Oh,
But Keith Hart, who was the guy that I spoke to when I was in Connecticut, the guy that was out there, even then, Lance and Chris did most of the training. Keith would stop by a couple times a week.
Right.
And work with us,
Right.
And that was it.
What,
That was it. And then you learned.
What are Lance and Chris like to work under?
They were great. Lance was most of the time, because Chris had a lot of, he worked as a bouncer and he was all over the place, man.
Right.
So Lance really was, as well as he's doing with his Storm Wrestling Academy today. Lance is amazing. He's patient. And he taught me invaluable lessons about the business. Basically, and I think this served me well and is why a lot of his students make it, was he got taught right up there.
Right.
And then he did the right thing by teaching all of his students right, or the Hart students right. It was a sense of pride for him, and it really showed. I mean, he smartened me up about so many things, And, it was really awesome, and I don't think I would be here today with any of the success if it wasn't for those. I mean, a lot of other things, variables, time, place, right thing.
Right.
Right nationality, because, we'll get into that later, but, yeah, Lance really was a huge help.
Okay. Yeah, because I read in Bret Hart's book that Stu was kind of known for doing that for people back in those days.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah, a lot of the older wrestlers were, man.
Yeah.
Like I said, a lot of those guys were legitimate, tough sons of bitches,
Right.
They really were.
Did you ever encounter the Ultimate Warrior?
I did, yeah. I knew Jim. God rest his soul.
Yeah.
I never been in the ring with him, but, he was actually pretty cool, man.
Right.
A lot of the stuff behind the scenes, I didn't know, but, he seemed fine with me.
Okay.
But then again, I wasn't doing business with him. And I think that's where a lot of that came into. So I was far away from, far well removed. And actually, when I met Jim, it was when he came back in 95 or 96, I believe, to work with Hunter in the Rumble. Not in around the Rumble time, but when
Survivor.
When Jim
I believe it was
back,
Survivor Series.
something like that. Yeah. But Hunter was I got to work with Hunter straight out the gate too.
Right.
We did a lot of work together. A lot of matches that people never saw. I wrestled him 30, 40 times. And this is when his gimmick wasn't getting over at all.
Oh, yeah.
Before he brought China in and a lot of other stuff.
Right. Okay. So the name Aldo Montoya, it had kind of a limited shelf life during its run in the WWE. Now, not for nothing, it is a very adult film sounding-ish name. Did you ever get offers to be in adult films, like as Aldo Montoya?
No. No, man. Hell no. Here's the deal with that, man. And again, this is where I come at you with the right place, right time.
Right.
I lived in Connecticut, and if you remember the time period, this was around 94, 95. Actually, I started in 93 doing squash matches, so around July of 94, and I'm pretty much on the money. July of 94, the office is in Connecticut. I live in Connecticut. They were really doing bad with business.
Okay.
They were struggling during the time of the lawsuit. Ica Pro, Vince was losing money hand over fist. That, whatever his bodybuilding federation was called. And they weren't flying in extras. They were really doing, that's why I got so much work. I lived in Connecticut. They didn't have to fly a lot of people in. I was good. The guys liked me. I could bump and showcase their talent. They could pay me $150 a day, and, boom, they save money, which even today, by a lot of these kids' standards, that's the most money they'll ever make in a night for wrestling.
Yeah,
hey. Kids get $40,
Hey, if I can, $150 a day is not bad,
Yeah, especially as a 19-year-old kid.
Yeah, especially back in those days.
Driving, 45 minutes. And anyways, so this was before they had a training facility of any kind. They set up a ring at the warehouse. That warehouse is still there. It's what they call the television studios now. And it was television studios then, just much smaller. And where they kept all their stuff, basically from, cages to sets to ring aprons to rings, ropes, all that nonsense you can imagine from the 80s and beyond.
Right.
I mean, I saw some really cool stuff, and I never had sticky fingers, and I wish I would have.
Right.
I would have walked away with some iconic stuff.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Anyways,
right.
I was in there to work with Brian Lee, and Mark Taker when they brought in, Brian Lee to do the fake Undertaker gimmick.
Right.
And so, I spent the whole week up there with Mark and Brian, just in our not street clothes, but gym clothes, working on basically an Undertaker squash match.
Oh, okay.
For Brian and I to really nail it down, with Brian doing Undertaker's moves and Mark there to guide him. So really, I was a bump dummy for a week. But the last day, which was a Friday, Vince wanted to see the whole thing. Vince and Pat Patterson. Pat was the main, one of the main, Vince's main helpers, bookers, whatever. And Vince and Pat come by the studio. So, Brian's there in full Undertaker gimmick. Vince gets to see a bullseye look at it right from the ring. He's sitting right by the apron, watching the whole thing. And, boy, you want intimidating. I'd worked with Mark several times as Undertaker. He was super cool.
Right.
So I knew Mark. I knew Pat. But, I knew Vince, but not no Vince. I mean, hi, Vince.
Yeah.
PJ. He knew my name, so that was good enough for me. But now I'm in an intimate setting, 6 guys in a room.
Right.
And he's going to see you work. And he's up close.
Right.
So we get through it. Everything went well. Vince was happy. Mark was happy. Everybody's happy.
Okay.
So Pat Patterson pulls me aside and says, "Hey, kid, you did a really good job." He goes, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Connecticut." "Oh, cool, "What nationality are you?" I said, "Well, Pat, I'm Portuguese." And he yells over to Vince, "Hey, Vince, this fucking kid is Portuguese, man." I'm like, that was kind of strange. Vince kind of pops.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. I didn't know being Portuguese was funny, but all right. I'll go with it. And then he goes, "Do you speak it?" I said, "Well, yes, sir, I do." In reality, I actually learned my folks I'm first generation born here in America.
Right.
Folks came over when they were in their 20s. So I learned Portuguese before English. So yeah, I speak it to this day fluent. They were, the whole time, they were looking for a Portuguese guy that could speak it to penetrate European markets and Brazil, which is 75, or South America, which Brazil makes up 75% of the population. They also speak Portuguese.
Right. Okay.
And they already had the character drawn up. And originally, Aldo Montoya was a soccer player, because that was around the time of the World Cup.
Okay.
So that's how that whole thing started. And then, of course, Aldo turned into the mask thing because they wanted to go lucha with it. And the drawing looked badass. The drawing from the art department, it looked like a Power Ranger. I mean, it looked totally like a lucha gimmick. Right. It looked like Road Warrior shoulder pads and stuff. Boy, when I got this thing on, mind you, I never worked under a mask. Yeah. And I got, they tried on the tights and stuff. And, and I put this shit on, I look in the mirror, and I'm like, you gotta be, this is a fucking rib, right? It was horrible. You couldn't breathe out of the thing. And it did not look like anything like that original deal looked in, the drawing. So, but hey, got my foot in the door. And once again, off we went.
Okay. Yeah, that actually, you actually answered one of my follow-up questions is, can you speak Portuguese fluently? So basically it's like, you have like one big chunk of the world that's pretty much all opened up to you that you can travel and go to at any given time, huh?
Oh yeah, I mean, I went, this is going back maybe 7-8 years ago. I did a pay-per-view for a promotion in Mexico, and, I went down there and I could speak decent Spanish. Portuguese is not like Spanish at all, but still it's Latin-based, and believe me, I've been around enough Spanish people to fake it till you make it. Right. So, yeah, it's really is helpful, and you always know what those sons of bitches are talking if they're talking behind your back.
Right. Now, this is going to seem like a cliched question, but, and I'm like not trying to like break stereotypes, but is it really like worth it and / safe working in Mexico? I've always wondered that.
Yeah, it's pretty safe, man. Yeah.
And it's like worth it in terms of like what they like. I'm not asking for numbers and figures, but I always wondered, is it really worth it going to that part of the world to work?
For me, it was. I got $1,500 for a show, but I was already, I was off of WWE TV with ECW when Vince did the 2 one-night stands I was both part of.
Right.
And I was part of their relaunch, which didn't go very far, but again, mind you, people think I got let go the second time because I just stopped showing up and somebody noticed. But as Aldo, I actually went into Vince's office and asked for my release. So, and they wouldn't give it to me because Scott and Kev went to WCW and they would have brought me in.
Right.
So they sent me to Memphis to learn how to work as a heel. After about a month of that, I said I quit. And you know, with Heyman and Candido, Chris Candido was friends with from WWE, from Skip and Sonny.
Okay.
Yeah, I got in, you know, and there went ECW. But yeah, you know, all that, the money's good. Puerto Rico could be dangerous. Yeah. Especially back in those older days, but not anymore. That's all, I think, very, very much not the way it is anymore. But you never, you know, you're going in by yourself. A lot of guys don't understand that. You're going in by yourself with not very much structure, and really, this is where handshakes and, you know, a lot of people, I've done a lot of things that are kind of negative because of, it's no secret, my issues with drugs and alcohol. Okay. And that's run a lot of my life, unfortunately. And, you know, a lot of times, man, you screw promoters, and I have, boy, it's blown up. Right? But I've never gone online once or anything else talking shit. This guy didn't pay me. You know how many times I was supposed to make money that I never made? If I was to go off on rants like these so-called promoters do, because I stiffed them, and I went and tried to get, trust me, dude, it would be like 90-10. The other way. So, you know, it is what it is. But yeah, Mexico, if you're a big enough star, Puerto Rico, if you're a big enough star, it's definitely cool.
What about Japan?
Oh, Japan's amazing.
Yeah.
I did 2 tours with All Japan. When All Japan was kind of, should say, on its way down. Giant Baba was, I believe he had passed away, and the company was in, not Johnny Ace, he was the main part of it, had left. He was a big star over there in booking the Americans, but Baba's wife owned it, and I went over there. I made great money, man. Nice. I did 30 days straight, and that was horrible.
Oh, wow.
It was horrible just because, man, you're on a bus. You know, you're not necessarily relegated to people you like or don't like. You're just all in there, and guys you really, you know, met once or twice. So it's very lonely, very, you know, talk about culture shock. Right. And you better go there strong, mentally fit. And I mean mentally fit. Yeah. That's why a lot of people don't make it back from Japan, man. And I hate to say it, but, you know, I went over there very, you know, this is going a little taboo, but I went over there very, very not well. Right. Both physical addiction to opiates, Oxycontin, and also mental health-wise, extremely depressed. And I went over there. That's a very physical, addicting drug. I was out of the drug in a week, so I wrestled 3 weeks, pretty much hardcore withdrawals.
Oh, damn. That's rough.
Not sleeping an ounce. You know, laying under the shower, like laying down, like a dead body in the shower, hot shower. Thank God they sold beer in the vending machines in Japan, just to try to chill me out, man. Puking, fucking, you know, diarrhea, everything, hot sweats, cold sweats, you know, 24-hour time difference. Just a rough tour. So if you're not mentally and physically well, don't ever go over there, man. Don't ever go over there. It's hard. It is real hard, and they want the best from you. So that was something I will never forget. And everybody was super cool. You know, and I did well, believe it or not, under those crazy circumstances, but it brought me back.
Here's a question. So, here's a question I always wondered, since we're sort of on the topic of it. How do, like, wrestlers, like, get weed and such when they're on the road, especially when they're on a cycle for, like, 20, 30 days?
It's amazing what fans will bring you.
I always wondered that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how it is now, man, and I'm sure it's all changed.
We're just talking. We're talking just back then.
Well, it was very different pre 9/11 to post 9/11.
Right.
And I have shit that would turn you all different kinds of colors. If I told you the things I did, and one day I will save it for a book. But
Right.
I've smuggled drugs in my crotch through countries that would pretty much put me to death, and I would have never seen the light of day again.
Well, yeah, I saw in an interview where basically, are you familiar with the Midnight Express movie?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
oh, yeah.
basically,
I've
short version where you said you were successful in getting by Kuwaiti customs, and it's like, how nervous were you? Like, seriously, like.
Well, when you're doing 2 8-balls of coke on a 15-hour flight in the bathroom, and then you're sweating bullets with your eyes wide open, bulging, and you're being escorted into another room with men with machine guns, it's pretty nerve-wracking. Yeah, I would say.
Like was it really like in the movie, like where your heart's just beating and you're wondering like, when are they gonna figure me out? And
yeah, more so when it's real. It's and you're altered. Whoa, not a good fit for me anymore.
Right. You know what they say when you're young.
Oh, man, I tell you, we were stupid, man. We did some crazy shit. And I shouldn't say I did some crazy stuff.
Right.
But, a lot of people have done things, and, now, but anyways, to get back on it, a lot of fans would bring shit, and,
right.
A lot of towns, and you knew somebody, too. You'd make connections, man. One thing, through the wondrous things that they've done with the wellness policy, I get to, I went to treatment this summer, as a matter of fact, and I see a therapist, every week, and I just talking to my therapist about it. It's like, it's just amazing how, you could look back and say that, just grateful for the stuff that you're able to get away with that just wouldn't work today, and drug addicts are real resilient. We're very good. My mother always said you'd be a multi-millionaire if you would apply what you did to get drugs in the real world, to somehow find a career for yourself. So. Yeah. Outside of wrestling, I should say. Yeah. So anyways.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole other because I've heard that stuff too, my whole life. So, if you put the effort in this, but that's a whole other interview right there.
Yeah. No doubt, man.
So getting back on track here. Okay, this is a question from actually one of my followers on my social media. Okay. Where they submitted questions that I'd choose the best one, and this is the more cleaned up version of it all.
Okay.
So when you decided to join ECW, was it because you enjoyed pain due to the hardcore nature of their promotion?
Oh, absolutely not, man. I was just as blown away by it as anybody else, because I came from the WWF.
Okay.
So yeah, I was actually really scared, and Candido came up to me, and I was one of my very first questions. He goes, "Chris, I'm a wrestler. I don't do that shit." And he goes, "No. We got guys that do that stuff, but we wrestle too." And I was like, "Okay." And lo and behold, thing a lot of people don't understand or know, I shouldn't even kill the gimmick, but doing that hardcore shit. Well, at least the way I did it was a lot easier than having a fucking 30-minute match.
Right.
With somebody like an Eddie Guerrero or a Benoit, we all had our little bells and whistles, and made, things we were comfortable with. And, a lot of people did a lot of crazy stuff, me included. But, I wouldn't change that for the world. And no, I wasn't looking for it. It's just something that happened, but I was very apprehensive, and it wasn't, we were good magicians, man. We all, a lot of people, we dictated really what we were comfortable with. I got more blood outside of ECW, actually, than I did in.
Right.
I only got color in the last year or so.
Okay.
Of my stay in ECW, so,
Okay. So, who was the nicest wrestler backstage, and which one was the biggest dick?
Nicest wrestler backstage has to be Jerry Lynn.
Okay.
Of any company I've been everywhere.
Okay.
I've wrestled everywhere. Outside the U.S., inside the U.S., every company pretty much. Yeah, Jerry Lynn is the nicest person I've ever met. I just actually had the pleasure of seeing him at a convention, Legends of the Ring, in New Jersey, and he was awesome, as always. He's the nicest guy, and that's why we wrestled so well together, too, I think. When you can trust someone, and I have his back and he has mine, you're in a respect. You know, and we always treated an opponent, the good wrestlers did anyways, and do. My opponent's my dance partner, you know, like Ric Flair, Terry Funk, and Funk. But Flair, Steamboat, man, they were beautiful dance partners. You can't choreograph a 60-minute match. You know, not move for move. You know, I always like to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, which is about 5 to 6 minutes of, 6 minutes of memorization. You know, and the rest is just block, you know, keep coming. You know, and I'd have, like, little words for my stuff. I'd have the guy in the corner, I'd give him chops, and I'd just tell him reverse, I'll do the flare, and they'll hit me, and I'll, you know, fly off and hit the guardrail or something, you know. I mean, we just called it how we saw it. And if the fans were starting to rumble for the baby face, it was time for him to come back. And if we had enough time, you know, or if the people, you had to really gauge the people. You know, it's a lot like improv, you know, comedy and stuff like that. You know, we have that live audience, and some things they buy in Philly that, you know, or I should say, like, let's say Massachusetts, you know, they'll buy something in Mass, and in Philly they'll shit all over it. And, you know, somewhere that doesn't see what they see in Philly, they might like. So every audience, essentially, is what I'm trying to say, is different. And if you go out there with a preconceived match and attack the fans with it, no matter what, and don't change it up, you're doing yourself and the audience a disservice. I think the best wrestlers, even with the complexity that the business is today, there's no, I mean, Jerry Lynn and I did, you know, and Van Dam was the same way with Lynn. We never called everything. There's just stuff you just do. And when you wrestle someone enough times, you kind of, you know, I always call it in the ring and talk. I was taught that you don't shoot somebody, or someone doesn't shoot you off the ropes, regardless if that was the plan, because you're behind us, you know, behind the curtain, without you calling it to me. And if you don't call it, I was taught you hold on to the ropes. I never got a you effed up chant. You know, I don't know if we're supposed to keep it clean or not, but you never got one. I never got one of those chants. That's not to say I haven't messed up, but you had, as a worker, as one of those old school cats, you had safeguards put in place to protect yourself. You know. And if something got screwed up, I'd always make it look like it was their fault. So, you know, and it would be, you know. So, you know, and that's something I wish, and I think they're doing a great job with NXT. That's something I hear a lot of good stuff from, and I'm glad they're doing it because Hunter is very much old school, and I know he spends a lot of time writing the storylines and the television and producing it. And I give him the credit for that. You know, he's got good guys working down there, guys like Arn and others who are of that belief. Although times are changing and we're changing really rapidly, you have to embrace it or you'll fall behind. But it, you know, that old school wrestling, adding some new school flavor. I mean, that's what Shawn Michaels did. You know, that's what all the greats did when the business started to change. And, you know, and now the business is changing more, but, you know, AJ Styles is a hell of a worker. You know, he can go any which way. And I guarantee you, AJ probably is a lot like a Jerry Lynn. You know, has been there, done that.
So you said who's the nicest, who's the biggest dick?
Oh, God. I have to think a little bit about this one. You know, I've really seldom had.
Like, who was that one they would be like, oh, such and such or so and so is on their way, and everyone in the locker room just groans like, oh, God, they're just the worst.
Oh, man. I mean, there's always a bunch of those. But one guy I didn't like, and he was all right to me, but I just knew he seemed shady. And because he was always, that gimmick, the Stooges, was not, it was originally, that was what we called like Steve Lombardi and Harvey Whippleman.
Yeah.
And I owe a lot to Lombardi for being nice to me in the ring, but every time he was such an ass kisser, every time he came around, man, we were just like, so change the conversation, look at do the whistle. There he is. So,
okay.
But everybody, at least to your face, everybody was always decent enough,
Right. Did you ever witness or be involved in any backstage fights?
I have not. Nope. Not that I recall.
Okay.
To be inaccurate, but I've never been in a real fight in my life, to be honest with you.
Oh, okay.
And I've never been a part of one, but I haven't seen one either. So.
Oh,
and again, I could be wrong. Like, I heard stories that this one slept this one, or this one got into it with that one.
Yeah.
But I never saw anything that worth of noting, anyways.
Okay. So, who was the best ribber? And I need some anecdotal evidence.
So, the best ribber?
Yes, and if you have any personal anecdotal evidence.
Oh God! All right, this is a toss-up, and. I don't know, man. Well, there's 3 of them. But the toss-up would... now there's 4. Okay, top 4 that I know personally were, I would say Kurt Hennig.
Okay.
Davey Boy Smith.
Okay.
Mr. Fuji.
Okay.
And X-Pac. My dear partner, X-Pac. So, classic. Very big ribbers.
Okay.
Yeah. And an anecdote, man, I remember one time we were in London. We just did Wembley or something like that.
Okay.
And Davey Boy and I were in the bar, and Mike Chioda, the referee, comes in. Now, this is circa 95 or so.
Okay.
And you got to imagine he's got the gold chain, and coming down, all pimped out. And the mullet, the feathered hair and the mullet, looking all pretty boy with the earring, the one earring at the time. We're like, Davey Boy just looks at me, and I was like, I don't know. So Davey goes up to him, drops something in his drink. 15, 20 minutes later, Kyoto's ordering shots, drinking party with all the girls.
Oh.
He passes out. Davey Boy goes, PJ, I'm going upstairs. Keep him here. I said, all right, Davey. So he comes down, man, like a little kid, running down the lobby with these clippers, literally like the ones you plug in somewhere. And he turns the buzzers on, dude, and we shaved him completely clean. And there was, by that time, a crowd had gathered, of about 10 or 15, guys, gals, whatever.
No.
And then, dude, the fans as well. He wakes up, man, and we're all laughing. He doesn't get it. He's in a haze. And then he looks like the lounge or the bar, whatever it was. I don't even remember that well. I remember that it was a mirror, like along the side, and he looked in the mirror and he sees what happened. Dude, I never saw someone come out of a straight, drunken, pilled up coma to the pit. Like, all of a sudden, like, the drugs had no effect.
Yeah.
He was so pissed. He turned purple, couldn't even talk. He was very vain.
Yeah.
And he just stormed off into his room. And the funniest thing was, 6 months when we come back for a return to London, fans were handing us pictures of the incident at the airport.
Was Dynamite around to protect him from his wrath for that, or was Davey Boy on his own?
Oh, Davey Boy was just fine. I don't think anybody would mess with Davey Boy.
Well, I heard he was I heard he was really nice in real life.
Oh, Davey was great, and Kurt too. God rest both their souls, man. Kurt Hennig was amazing. Davey Boy, they were both. That's the thing, man. Is they would rib you to check out your character, and that still happens in football locker rooms, sports locker rooms,
right?
And I don't know if it happens in wrestling locker rooms, but not as much as it did. But at first when I was younger, I didn't understand it, and I felt like weird about it. Like, these guys don't like you. And Kid and Shawn and Hunter, they'd be like, if they didn't like you, they wouldn't rib you. And they're doing it to kind of see how you'll take it.
Right.
And even Davey Boy, when he'd rib me, pull me aside and say, kind of give me a wink, like, just play cool. Don't sell it, don't put it over.
Right.
And you know what? Then they start messing with you, and you start ribbing the other guys coming in.
Right.
That's the way it was, man. But if you were a jerk and stepped out of line,
Right.
You were the one getting ripped. Usually if you were acting out or you thought you were too cool for where you should be, the veterans would get you. But
Right.
it kept everybody in check. It was wrestling's little way of keeping you, you where you should be.
Were you ever around for, like, Dynamite Kid whenever he would go?
I was not. No.
Oh,
But I heard he was just nasty.
You weren't around for the fight with the Rougeau brothers?
No, I was not.
Oh.
No, I was not. No. So.
Okay.
Yeah, man.
Okay, so now we're going to get to the plane ride from hell, okay, because you were one of the more conscientious people that were on the plane ride from hell. Just to help
believe it or not. Yeah.
So just that, because, like, believe me, this is like one of those incidences that has just been done and done and done again. And every time they interview someone who was involved or there, you learn something just a little bit newer about it, that just makes it even funnier. So
yeah,
from doing my research on that, Goldust omitted in the previous shoot interview that he did absolutely nothing wrong during the flight. He says he just spilled dip on the floor and JR went ballistic over it.
Who's this now?
Goldust. Dustin.
Dustin?
Yeah.
On that flight?
Yeah. Is it true he says he did nothing wrong during that flight?
I don't think he did, to be honest with you, man.
So he didn't sing?
I don't know, man. I tell you, that is one of those things where there was so much going on that there's no way to single out one thing.
Okay.
No, I don't put it that way. If he did, I don't doubt that he did.
Okay.
But there was so much better stuff going on. Brother, that was a show for all ages.
Okay.
I mean, it was just, it was really out of control. And of course, stories get bigger and badder, and they'll change. And by that time, it'll have amplified too. So now the legend has become bigger than anything else. But I do remember that it was very out of control and something that you would see in a movie.
Did X-Pac ever receive his receipt for cutting off Michael Hayes' ponytail?
I don't believe he did. That's all I'm going to say.
Did he at least confront him on it? Like, what the heck, you cut off my hair?
I'm sure he did. But, Michael Hayes has done some harm to a few people in his day.
Yeah.
Even stuff I won't get into because it concerns me.
Right.
So, you know what? You get what's coming to you, big boy.
I see. Now, was X-Pac intoxicated at the time, or was that a sober decision he made to go there?
Oh, Shawn was probably, I wouldn't say, he was fine. He knew what he was doing. I mean, I don't take it past Shawn to be, having a couple of cold ones or something or whatever. But no.
But he can't blame it on he can't blame it on nothing but his own decision. He chose to do that.
Shawn, I'll tell you, Shawn. He has my utmost respect, man. He's a wonderful person. Shawn Waltman is a wonderful human being, and you know what, man? He's a very fair guy, and I tell you what, you can't say anything bad about him, at least to me.
Right.
So,
right.
Shawn was always super cool, man. Always super cool. So
yeah. And it seems like in other interviews of all the Click members, it seems like he and Kevin Nash were liked the most when they were alone, and we can't say the rest for say Shawn Michaels. I was always the Shawn Michaels fan, but again, I wasn't there. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, well, Shawn, man, Shawn. See, I love Kev. I like all of them. They were all cool to me.
Yeah.
But Shawn was cool. Shawn and I had a great relationship.
Right.
When he won the belt from Brett, Shawn was really, he was putting out some of his best work. I mean, he was really changing the business and working hard. Okay. And he got that chance, that the way they built it up was really true life. That boyhood dream gimmick.
Right.
We were partying hard, but we were working harder.
Right, right.
And he was burnt out. So Tim White, the referee, and the legendary Arnold Skoland, who was an agent, and he handled the money back in the day. They drove Shawn, and Shawn didn't want to be alone. So he's like, Shawn, Pete, come with me. So it was awesome. The office is, paying for the car, the nice Lincoln town car, and, I just got to hang out with Shawn, really, get the room paid for. Okay. And we had a great relationship, so much so as when I was on top at ECW, I went to then Texas Wrestling Alliance and won the belt down there and actually gave it to Shawn
nice.
After that, yeah, because I'd won it and something like that, and gave it to him or some stuff like that. I forgot how it went down, but that all happened, and I actually got Sandman to go down there too. So.
Oh, okay. Now going back to the plane ride from hell, when Bradshaw knocked out Michael Hayes for smacking him on the head and getting blood all over his new suit. Had Michael Hayes been sober, do you think he could take Bradshaw in a fight in real life?
No. Oh, no. I mean, there's just so much difference. Bradshaw's, especially back then, man, he was a big boy.
That's what everybody says. Everyone I've ever asked, they all say he was a big boy and still is.
Yeah, he was one of those raw-boned, big kids, man. I mean, he was older now, I shouldn't call him a kid, but when he was younger especially, he was big, thick, big bone guy, football player style, tall.
Yeah.
Not a chance in hell. As tough as Michael Hayes may be, I don't even know how tough he is. I'm not doubting it. I'm just saying, I'm not going to call him tough in this out, but Bradshaw killed.
Right. Now
did Bradshaw kill a lot of people?
Right. Now, what were your thoughts when him and Ron Simmons went out and dished out the beating to Public Enemy on that episode of Heat? Do you think it was called for or uncalled for?
Hey, man, I don't know. I don't even remember, to be honest with you, but because I think I wasn't even there at the time. I think I might have been still in ECW, but I'd heard about it. Probably somewhere along the lines, I'm sure. I hate to talk about people that aren't here to defend themselves, not knowing what happened. Perhaps the Public Enemy went, just knowing who they were and hearing stories, maybe they did something to warrant it. So
right. Okay. Were you cool with Public Enemy?
I really didn't know them that well.
Okay.
Again, that's why I just hear the stories.
Okay.
I go. You meet all of them. You meet everybody, but sometimes it's just for a night or two.
Right.
So
right.
Two passing ships kind of a deal.
Right. I
don't really get to know a lot of these guys.
Right. I get it. I understand. Okay. Well, here's another fictional matchup if they're at there, and I ask this to everybody: who do you think would win in a fight, Haku or Brock Lesnar?
Oh boy. I don't know if it's just fantasy. Brock's pretty tough. I don't know, man. I mean, I've heard Haku is the real deal, but again, in all fairness, I've seen Brock fight.
Right.
I've seen him wrestle, like wrestling.
Right.
I've seen tape on him. I've never seen Haku.
Right.
And I've heard the stories, and they're legendary.
Right.
But I don't know, man. I don't know. I know Haku is a wonderful dude.
Right.
I don't believe the stories because I've never seen, and I don't question it now. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me in trouble with that boy.
Right.
But he's so kind that he's unassuming, and apparently he's one of the toughest guys on the planet. So
right.
I wouldn't mess with him.
I'm trying to get him on the show so I could finally solve the mystery about the man who he allegedly threw out the second story window in Japan. Like, did he live? Did he die? What ultimately became of him?
I never heard that story. I heard about the one him ripping some dude's eye out.
I heard on like a Ric Flair interview where it was Ric Flair, Hawk, and Haku, and they were in Japan, and their promoter and a basketball team that was over there, that was from North Carolina, was over there playing, and they walked up and started calling wrestling fake, and what happened was that the promoter went down to the store and grabbed a Bic razor, and then Hawk took the razor out and went up to the biggest dude and just slashed him, and it was like 7-on-3, but it was just on into tilt the odds, I guess Haku threw a man through the second-story window, and according to Saturn in my interview, he says you could still see the marks from where they had to replace the plate glass. So
I should not laugh at that, but wow, I don't. You know what? I don't doubt it. If they said if it comes from the wrestlers, it's probably true.
now, and the thing is, I did my research
man.
whether a man could live or die, and it's like it all really depends how someone falling from that height probably lands. I imagine
I mean, I would imagine, though, realistically, that he would probably have dealt with some law enforcement issues. So either way, man,
they said
I'm sure he's all right. I hope he's all right.
Yeah, but I heard I heard Haku wasn't allowed in Japan for like 3 decades.
Okay, then. Probably true.
But again, I don't know this. This is just, what I dig up online.
Yeah, that's funny, man. Wow. Yeah.
So, which would you say of all the promotions you've worked for, which one was the funnest? That one job where you just go in, you feel right at home, kick your feet up, hey, how you doing?
That's the easiest thing of all time is ECW.
Right? Oh, yeah.
I think all of us, I think we all felt culture shock when that happened, when we had to go work somewhere else. I mean, you go into a place where you are doing something that really nobody's ever done. And I'm not talking about the hardcore stuff necessarily. Right. I'm just talking about the presentation of professional wrestling. Hardcore stuff, you can trace it back to the 70s and even probably further back. The Sheik, the original Sheik, Sabu's uncle.
Right, yeah.
And, the Von Erich's dad, Fritz, and other guys, the Funks. You can go on and on.
Right.
But, man, guys in Florida did it, Dusty, all them guys, Sullivan. But what ECW was punk rock. We were really doing a show for, mature audiences, and it was blood, it was music, it was sex.
Right.
And there was a real buzz behind a bunch of guys who were really, land of misfit toys. I mean, it really was.
Right.
And we were able to, we were all guys, or most of us were at least, a good portion of us. A lot of them were born, came up in the Philly, indie area, but a lot of us had been somewhere before.
Right.
Been screwed out of a deal or bad taste in our mouths. Now you're giving us every color in the world and a huge paint canvas to paint our own thing.
Right.
And we really had so much freedom there.
Right.
And where I think I excelled was I came in, worked with the right people, and I knew how to work. I knew that I was already in the WWF, so I got that pay-per-view experience, live Raws. You make fun of Aldo all you want. I traveled all over Europe, all over, the UK, all over, everywhere, South Africa, you name it, I've been there with the WWF before ECW. So I know how to work crowds, I know how to look into the hard camera, and how to, present myself as a star. Right. Whereas a lot of guys were just figuring it out.
Right.
So right off the bat, I think came and said, here's a kid who's hungry, who's young, and who knows a little something. That's the guy I want to work with. I was still green, but I could mold this guy, and I could mold Lance Storm. I could mold Jerry Lynn. I could mold Van Dam, Sabu, or whoever, and really let us go. Dreamer, Sandman. I mean, it was ridiculous, and the people were just, the passion and the money was not bad either. And I can't say the experience was the same for everybody because it wasn't.
Okay.
There was a lot of inequality in pay because I was doing really well at ECW. I made more money in ECW than I did for a lot of years in Vince.
Oh, really?
And a lot of people won't understand it. Oh, yeah. A lot of people won't understand that and the way the pay structure is, but the guys that know do know. Not my best years, mind you.
Right.
But, I wrestled on Friday and Saturday night, usually in the Northeast.
Right.
I was home, making, $2 to $3 grand a week.
Oh, that ain't bad.
Working Friday and Saturdays.
Right.
Go home, sleep in your own bed.
Right.
And where people don't get it is that's kind of under the table work.
Right.
And where you at the WWE, you're paying taxes and rental cars and all kinds of hotels and stuff.
Right.
So, you can make more, but you're really not making more.
Right.
So
I understand.
ECW was, it was great. A lot less structure, but it was we were awesome, dude. It was great. It was fun. I didn't mind going to work at all.
Right.
It was amazing, and you're working with people you really loved and trusted. That's why so many people hung around.
Right.
To
Okay.
the end.
Okay.
I stuck around till the bitter end.
Okay.
I wrestled the last show for ECW.
Right.
I closed the doors with Dreamer and everybody else that stuck around, and and I was also one of the first to go.
Right.
Before Paul was still trying to. Well, we come to find out years later, he'd already kind of made his deal
Right.
with Vince.
Right.
This was in the old days of American Online.
Right.
You had to actually plug your computers onto the wall.
Oh, I remember.
I emailed Jim Ross, and I told him what was going on. My checks hadn't been coming, so contract was null and void.
Right.
He said, hey, here's a shot. I had a downside guarantee of 6 figures, which I'd never had before.
Right.
Because back then Vince didn't give you guarantees. So,
Right.
hey, it was
Okay.
great, and whatever, man. I would have stuck around for the next, whatever amount of years, but it didn't happen that way, unfortunately. And I think wrestling really, really suffered from. Everybody will say that was the greatest epic when ECW and WCW changed, were pretty much taken by sucked up into the conglomerate, and it wasn't WCW. It wasn't Vince's fault. He just
Right.
won. Paul, unfortunately, the funny thing, and Paul says it himself, if you go listen to podcasts and other, where he talks in depth, if you look at it, in the last year of ECW, people say the product wasn't as good. I say people really weren't watching. It's more the romanticism of the 95, 90,
Right.
all those eras, those couple of eras before going into barely legal. Money-wise, I know we were making more money than at any time in ECW history. But we also were putting up quite a bit of money for pay-per-view, for pay-per-view slots. The payroll had gotten bigger because everybody was competing for talent. You had WCW still trying to buy out guys.
Right.
So Paul had to sometimes pay that kind of money to keep a Van Dam, a Sabu, a Sandman, and not all of them did stay.
Right. Right.
I was fine just where I was. Do I regret taking the money? Sometimes.
Right.
But I don't think it would have helped. I just probably would have been more of a mess. Maybe
Right.
with more money, but it wouldn't have lasted.
Right. Right.
So I'm glad that it happened the way it did. It happened the way it was meant to happen. And but when both those companies shut down, it really changed the business forever, because how many guys, and I got a shot to keep going on for 2.5 more years with WWE.
Yeah.
But how many hundreds of guys that were under contract now were out on the streets? So
Right.
the landscape of professional wrestling truly changed.
Right.
And it hurt. It hurt, and it took until Hunter coming up with, or I don't know who came up with it, but till NXT came around, and Ring of Honor's been around for a long time.
Right.
But it really took NXT to really start, because right now we're seeing a big resurgence with a lot of different promotions. There's a good handful of 6, 7 promotions that are probably doing pretty good, gangbuster business.
Right.
And over in the UK right now, it's red hot.
Right. Right.
So, pro wrestling's doing very well. Unfortunately, it's just we're still in a time of change. The way we consume the product is ever changing.
Right.
And it's not in the favor of wrestlers necessarily. We're still figuring that out, like with Napster and shit.
Right.
Where
I
I used to
remember.
get a nice royalty check from DVDs and so forth that I
Right.
don't see it, VHS tapes, stuff like that.
Right.
That nowadays you get all the content you want on the network, but like royalties with music, a lot of people don't even make albums anymore.
Are
They
you
put out a single or two and they tour on that single to make their money.
are
You
you
know, a lot
on the
of- a
WWE
lot of-
network?
Oh, I'm all over the network, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I think I'm on every single ECW show, and even the one match I had with Scott Hall in Poughkeepsie was aired on the Rare Gems portion of
Right.
one of their shows, yeah.
Right.
Its entirety. So, but I don't
Huh.
get anything on that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. Well, because it's just changed.
Right.
Because they're buying it. Really, your rights are owned. That footage is theirs, and they're selling it in such a way that it's pretty near impossible to try to grab a penny out of something that's $9.99 and divvied up how many ways, and how are you going to accurately even get that? I don't even know if that would stand in court. But back then, if you were on DVDs, I still get them, just a lot less, because I don't have any fresh stuff out there. But for my, WWE dolls and stuff, or doll, I should say, I only had one, but it's still some lingering DVD sales that I may be on, box sets whatsoever. I get a check, and it's all broken down into pennies. But from, overseas sales and everything, you get printouts. But there's no way with all this talent that they have and people that were not under contract, just the footage that was bought and sold, bought by Vince, sold by the promoter. Really, the footage is owned, and, I don't know the technicalities of the difference between, but I can. You buy a DVD retail for $20.
Okay.
You're on that one DVD. How are you going to see the, calibrate a $9.99 package for the entire shebang? It would be probably a penny.
Right.
Per month.
I get it. I get it. Okay.
Yeah, it's very complicated. It sucks for the boys.
Yeah.
It really does, because that was a good source of income. So I'm getting more into the business aspect of it. But, hey, times are changing, and it's a good time to get the heck out of the wrestling business if you're not 22.
Right. Okay, now here's a question that probably you've heard a lot. Now, it's no secret that there are some, if not quite a few, of the ECW boys that still have crazy heat with Paul Heyman over the whole him not paying him. Are you one of those people?
I have no heat with Paul.
Okay.
Look, I don't even, I know there are guys, the obvious, I think, and I hate to say it, but, I think obviously the most heat is probably, and I'm projecting now, I don't know this for fact, it's just, I would imagine Tommy Dreamer probably, no way, he would never admit it, but I think Paul and Tommy's relationship was never the same. Tommy really gave his body, his heart, his mind, his soul to ECW financially and as well. I know he helped in ways, and a lot of others did too. Not to get in specifics, because I'll be here all day dissecting.
Right.
But I don't have any heat with Paul. Paul made me a superstar. He gave me more than fair. Well, I wouldn't say more than fair. He gave me market value for what I was doing. And he enabled me to go and make money pretty much for the rest of my career. On the name, I still sell myself as ECW icon Just Incredible, not WWE wrestler Just Incredible, or anything else. I just had a Legends figure from Toy Figures Inc. Made, of me, and I got a pretty good flat rate for it. It wasn't made from a character that Vince created. It was Paul Heyman's.
Right. Okay.
So, I have no heat with Paul. I would have liked for him to have been more honest, but hey, that would have been Paul Heyman. I'm not calling him anything else.
Right.
I'm not calling him a liar. I'm just saying he got in way over his head.
Right.
If he didn't do what he did, somehow, he would have. But then again, if he didn't do the things he did do, there would have been no ECW.
Right.
Mark LaMonaco, Bubba, he wore a lot of hats, did a lot of stuff. Taz did a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Whipwreck, Dreamer, Candido, Sitch, so many guys had their hands. Shane Douglas, to help in all, from promotion to everything. So many ways. When a company grows, it almost grew too big.
Right.
For the amount of manpower we had. We didn't have an office. We didn't have a studio.
Right.
We were really talking about mom and pop.
Right.
Which is what made it so cool. But then, people were starting to catch on. We became too big.
Right.
And, where royalties, artists started to figure out, hey, they're using our music.
Right.
And, you got to pay people for that. We were getting away with murder. So, but again, the original ECW would not have been if it wasn't for the moves that Heyman made. So I'm at peace with it all.
Okay. So now we're to the segment of the show called Legitimate Problems That Wrestling Fans Had to Deal With Back in the day that you used to wrestle. Okay, and what I'm talking about is where, even as a grown adult man, I always run the possibility of, like, if you walk into a room and the guy happens to, or girl happens to be a wrestling fan, and they could say, like, what's your name? And you go to say your name, and they're going to be like, it doesn't matter what your name is. Or, like, there's not a wrestling fan alive who hasn't fantasized about giving their boss a stone cold stunner at some point in their life. You know, that sort of thing. Or, like, if you're, not paying attention, you can get, like, rock bottomed or a Death Valley driver into a pool or a snowbank or something because you're from the Northeast, and you know how stuff like that can happen. So you had like a series of different finishing moves. Like you had the super kick, and you had one of my personal favorites. That's incredible because I actually like executed it on one of my siblings when they weren't expecting it one day. So did you know that like people were going around like performing your finisher on each other, just for shits and gigs?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh
yeah, they still do. They still do, man. How many times I get, pretend super kicked or try to get close enough to me, and it's harmless. It's fun. It's a shame that unfortunately, it's not like that as much anymore as it was back in those days. In the days of the stunner,
right.
And I ripped the kick from Shawn, obviously, and there were other people that did it. But yeah, man, I mean, it's a really cool thing. But I have nothing really, no really big story to tell on that. Just it still happens sometimes, and it's cool.
Well, people went around like just doing it to each other, and it's like from the super kick. Do you like it could have actually started the trend, which eventually like led to Family Guy between you and Shawn, that all of life's problems can simply be solved by kicking?
Yeah. Sure could. Still can be. Hell, I got a 10-year-old kid, and probably that's all I'm kicking in the head right now.
Right.
So, yeah. There's some super kicks being thrown around my house.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to hear. Okay.
Yeah, well, it's easy, and that was actually really quick. One of the reasons that Shawn chose it, and then I chose it as a secondary one as well, is because you can't get everybody up in the tombstone. And Shawn's belief was of Austin and Rock is you want something you could hit anybody with.
Right. Okay.
Because if your move is like something, fancy or something that you got to think, you got a finishing move, and you got a guy 30 nights around the horn, and you're told to hit the finisher on him. You got to make sure they're going to be willing to take that finisher.
Right.
Not everybody wants to get superplexed or super drivered or whatever the hell super things these kids are doing, or flippity flop.
Right.
Daggers, and you want to do something, that RKO, perfect finisher, super kick, stunner.
Yeah.
Diamond cutter, stuff like that. It was just fun. It was cool, man. That stuff got, and there's moves like that today, and it's just wrestling will hopefully, and I think it's got a good chance of happening again. It will get hot again.
Okay.
It's just, to me, wrestling is just not cool anymore.
Yeah.
I think wrestling is NXT was cool and is cool, but I think it lost an opportunity of really branching out because, unfortunately, it's marketed for kids, and I think there are a lot of fans. That's why ECW worked so well, that want to see tits and ass, that want rock and roll music, that want adult consumption. I want to have fun with this. I know it's a work. I know it isn't real, but I'll play along if you give me something to play along to.
Right. I agree.
Look, I've worked with Kofi Kingston a million times. Haven't met the other two guys.
Right.
All talented, but I hate that New Day.
Right.
I hate the gimmick. I think that's horrible.
Okay.
And anybody that chants along to it, it's just like, you guys are really that bored to get into that? I mean, as heels, I could get it. Like, you hate that.
Right.
But as baby faces, it's like, wow, we really... And that's why they have a hard time. And that's why you always see the old cats come back, and that's a problem. It's been a problem historically.
But it's
stars anymore.
But it's interesting you bring up the New Day. Now, let's just play devil's advocate. Imagine the New Day in the Attitude Era, where they were truly allowed to do whatever they wanted.
Oh, they could have been funny.
Oh, like if they were in the Attitude Era, oh my God, that would have been amazing.
Yeah, they could have, again, it's not to say that we're only allowed to be, I would have been Aldo Montoya if I wasn't, you're not going to go out there and do what they don't want you to do.
Right.
That's where I say that we were given so much to be able to do those things.
Okay.
It's like, look, you can only do what you're allowed to do.
Okay,
and, Vince, has always had a very close, more so than ever before, has a close, control of the finished product. And he has a very specific vision. And the McMahon family do as well. And who's to tell them that it's, hey, they put the blood, sweat, and tears in, not me. And they're the one that speak to the investors. So as a company, financially, I think, fans will always complain and will always be dissatisfied by what's going on.
Right.
But at the end of the day, wrestling is as healthy as it's ever been, and who could blame them? But
right.
I have a hard time watching wrestling. I don't anymore, except for not even the big four. I'd say the big one.
Right.
Maybe the Rumble I'll throw in there.
Right.
That's pretty much it.
I've
given up my subscription to the network because, as fun as I do think it is a fun product, and it's very much worth the money.
Right.
But how many times can I watch old NWA matches, or I don't like to watch myself, or ECW, because that just reminds me of what was and what could have been.
Right.
And I never watch my WWE stuff.
Right.
So, it is what it is. Maybe I'm just one of those 44-year-old veterans that are like, get off my lawn, you punk kids. When I was your age, we were, that
right,
kind of
right.
deal.
Hey, well, well, okay.
We were doing lines of cocaine off strippers' asses before we went to the ring, which is BS, but nonetheless, it gets better with age.
Right. Okay, so do you have any upcoming shows or appearances?
I have a show and I'm going to be doing a horrible job of promoting this, but I have an actual wrestling match, which will be interesting because I'm really semi-retired, if not, pretty much all retired. There was a friend of mine who needed a favor out in Scranton, Pennsylvania on the 9th, and on, I got to say this right, on the 16th, I believe, I have one for Blitzkrieg Pro Wrestling in Enfield, Connecticut, and it's just an autograph signing.
Oh, okay.
So, and I'm out January 6th. I'm going to be in Dallas, Texas, for a promotion out there, but I do not have the stuff in front of me.
Okay.
Which makes me unprepared and unprofessional.
It's okay. This has been one of the more longer interviews I've done, so it's like.
Oh, I told you I was gonna go with it.
And it's like, I don't know if you heard like the papers rustling, but it's like we keep like jumping all over the place in terms of the questions here. So, but
yeah, I tend to do that. Yeah.
No. It's cool. It makes things interesting.
I'm trying to be good. See, what I'm doing is when you have kids, it's homework time, so you walk in all areas of the house that they are not. And I'm also smoking cigarettes. So I am smoking cigarettes not where I'm in garages and freezing my ass out outside and leaving and getting asked questions. And, I multitask at the Credible House, brother.
Oh, okay. Great. Yeah. Good to hear. Alrighty. Well, this has been an amazing interview, and I can't wait to have you on for the follow-up in the near future.
That's very cool, man. I had a really good time, and, anytime, man. You guys have been awesome.
All right. Okay, all right, Just Incredible. We'll see you next time, all right?
All right, man. I'll see you next time, brother.
All right, bye.
All right, and there you have it, everybody. Just Incredible. Yeah, he's an interesting guy. We went over a lot about a lot. And he answered a lot of questions that I had lined up for him, but he's also arisen a whole bunch of new ones. So obviously, Justin will be back on for the follow-up sooner before later. And I ask everybody, sit tight until then. So this is Cable Guy, signing off. Be well out there in the world, and let's all be nice to each other.